I have about 4 tablespoons of unsalted butter here. We're gonna go melt that and let it cool. A half cup of milk, a half a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar. Give it a good stir. And then we just want to let that sit for ideally at least 5 minutes. So we're gonna let that sit. And then I'm gonna use the microwave to melt my butter and then let it cool. I usually do it in short increments of about 15 seconds at a time. You don't want to overdo it on your butter in the microwave and it'll go quick. So I'll go do that and be right back. So first we're gonna add 1 cup granulated white sugar. Next we're going to add 1 cup of Bob's Red Mill 1:1 baking flour. Next we're adding a half teaspoon of salt. Next I'm gonna be adding my cocoa powder. We're gonna use a lot, we want it really chocolatey. We're gonna use half a cup. 1 teaspoon of baking soda. Two teaspoons of baking powder going in. Next, we're going to be adding espresso powder. The fine grains of the espresso help incorporate it into your batter better, but it will help with the flavor profile here. It will really help bring out those dark and bitter, not in a bad way, but in a good way, notes of the chocolate and help complement it and make it taste more chocolatey. It will not taste coffee-y from this. It will just make that chocolate flavor more rich. We are now going to be using our mixer for the rest of this recipe. You also notice I'm using the whisk attachment here instead of the paddle like you normally would for a cake batter. That is just going to be important here to aerate our batter as much as possible, since it's a little bit of a different style from maybe some of the other chocolate cake batters you've made in the past. So we're using the whisk attachment. So we're gonna get those dry ingredients incorporated. Swipe down the sides just to make sure nothing got flung up that's not going to get mixed in, or you don't have any clumps hiding in there. And then we're gonna mix a little more. We've got our dry mixture. You can see it looks pretty well incorporated, not really any kind of clumps or lumps that I'm seeing that are significant. At this stage, I would recommend starting to get some water boiling. Next, we are going to add 2 eggs. So I am actually gonna incorporate my room temperature eggs into my dry mixture now. We'll stop for a moment simply to scrape down our sides and make sure everything is evenly incorporated. The reason I sometimes like incorporating egg this way is I can make sure I minimize lumps, which can help reduce mixing, can help you get a good smooth texture, and it'll also mean less time that I should have to mix once I add in a lot of my other moisture containing ingredients. I'm gonna let it mix just a little longer. I think that looked pretty good. Texture-wise, those eggs are pretty well incorporated. I'm going to be slowly adding in our other wet ingredient, which is again our melted butter. We had 4 tablespoons of that. You can see it's getting like a thick paste. Our half cup of milk that we added a half a tablespoon of apple cider to. We will slowly mix that in, as well as 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Make sure your vanilla extract is gluten-free. It is a common area where I find gluten in the caramel coloring. As you can see, some of our batter actually got stuck here in the whisk. That is fine. We'll push that out to help speed this along. We'll start mixing again. You guys can kind of see this batter has taken on a beautiful sheen to it with everything incorporated. We're gonna just swipe down those sides again, and then our last ingredient we're gonna add here is gonna be that boiling water. So we're about to add our half cup of boiling water. I just got it out of the kettle. I have it measured out, and we are going to be mixing while we add this. We don't want to get anything scrambled egg texture like or disproportionately heat any part of our batter. Now the reasoning for the boiling water really helps that chocolate flavor bloom and really brings it to the forefront. Perfect. So as you guys can see, This left us with a very loose liquidy batter. Like I said, it has a high moisture content. That is also why I think these kinds of, this style of cake works really well for gluten-free. You've heard me say in some of the other videos, things that help gluten-free are acid content and high moisture, as well as extra leavening agents. I've got my lining here. I've spritzed each of them with just a little bit of canola oil. The goal of that is to actually help the cupcake release easier, so it isn't super solidified into the cupcake wrapper. I kind of always hate when you can barely get it out of there. So we want to fill each of these about halfway full. That is pretty good. I'm now going to pop these into the oven. My oven is at 325. We're going to bake them for 15 to 20 minutes. Alright, so while our cupcakes are in the oven, our next step here is going to be making the tempered chocolate for our molds, our chocolate skulls. So we're going to microwave this for 30 seconds. So 30 seconds, give it a good stir. We're going to make sure that we stir really good. We're going to put this back in the microwave for another 30 seconds. Give it a stir. You want to get it completely melted and all the crystal structures in the chocolate a chance to kind of reset, and they will come back in a very appealing way. When they reset and it's done at the right temperatures, they restructure in a way that makes them very shiny and they have a good snap to them. We're going to put it back in for 15 seconds this time, so we did 30 twice. Now we're downgrading to 15 seconds. Alright, so this was after 15 more seconds. It's pretty much entirely melted. We're gonna just use our syringe and push it down into the mold there. I'm probably gonna put between 10 and 15 milliliters in each of these, and then we'll see what they look like. Perfect. So you want to get these filled up, and then we're gonna let them rest. You can set them in the fridge, or you can do it out at room temperature. Fridge will go quicker for you. You don't want to shock the chocolate and drop it too cold, so I would let it sit out for room temperature for a little while to cool down before you jump to such an escalation in temperature change. Here are our cupcakes fresh out of the oven. I have our test toothpick here. Just gonna insert it in the middle, and you want it to come out clean. Now we're going to be making our chocolate ganache. I'm going to use the same bowl as I did before, and I've got about 5 ounces or a little over a cup of dark chocolate, 62% in there. We're going to be microwaving this and stirring it, very similar to how we made our chocolate for the skulls. When we get started, I'm going to first do it for 30 seconds. Alright, so that's pretty well mixed there. Now we're just going to go microwave it for another 30 seconds. This is our chocolate after the second 30 seconds. Make sure you stir it really well in between your microwaving. We're gonna do 15 more seconds and then take a look. All right, here is our ganache after 15 more seconds. And I wanna let this cool down for just a moment before I add in our next component, which is gonna be the heavy cream. I don't want to shock the chocolate. Chocolate is very, very sensitive. You guys can kind of see how beautiful this chocolate looks. We're going to mix in a third a cup of heavy whipping cream. Slowly add it while I stir. And then we're going to make sure we want to stir really good to get this incorporated. You don't want it to cool it down too quick and then just have your chocolate, kind of have chunks of chocolate in your heavy cream. Let me hold it closer so you guys can kind of see. All right, let's make our buttercream to frost our cupcakes. We're gonna start off with 1 stick or half a cup of softened butter, unsalted. We're gonna use our whisk attachment on our stand mixer, get that going. So I've wiped down the sides. Gonna let it whip again. We want it fluffy. All right, that looks like a pretty good texture to me, so we're gonna start adding in our powdered sugar. We're gonna add about 1.5 cups total here. I always kind of eyeball buttercream a little, so you might take away or more likely add to that as you see fit when you're making it or testing it for your preferences. But we're gonna do it 1/2 cup at a time. So we're gonna start off with our first 1/2 cup here. Next we're gonna add our second 1/2 cup of sugar. All right, so then we're gonna add our third 1/2 cup of sugar. So then for some of our flavor components, we're going to add 1/4 cup of cocoa powder or baking cocoa. I have some melted chocolate here, and we're going to add just over 2 tablespoons. Again, start low on your mixing speed and then increase so you don't send cocoa powder everywhere. All right. It's looking decently well incorporated, but we are going to try and, as usual, knock things off. So just for a second, I'm pretty happy that that's well incorporated, and now we're going to add our heavy cream. I'm going to start with 2 tablespoons and then see what I think about how it looks. Now, for like I said, this is about 2 to 3 tablespoons of heavy cream. So I'm gonna add 1 more half tablespoon and see what I think. So we're gonna be at 2.5. This should be pipeable if you're using a piping bag, or you can just spread it with a knife if you're doing like a sheet cake.